Rabbi, your light.
Do you need the light on?
The light is good. I mean, I have light from here.
Okay.
Light of God, as they call it.
Oh, then we should all get on.
That's what you're here for.
That's right.
Okay, Shavua Tov to everybody, Good Tavach. Today we will be learning, continuing from where we left off last week. We were just in the middle of discussing our introduction to mitzvahs that men are obligated and women are exempt from. We went through a few times, and last week was our main focus on that, our first time viewing it in ShulchanAruch, the introduction to the prohibition of the women's exemption from time-dependent commands, and specifically as it correlates to tzitzis and tefillin. We went through last week why women are exempt from those two mitzvahs, and we began and we concluded last week regarding if women can do it if they choose to. So today we're going to...
time-bound positive.
Yeah, positive commands, correct. Only positive. So today we're going to go more into that. We're going to go through historically a number of Jewish personalities, women in Jewish history who either have explicitly been told of that they wore talis and tefillin, or have made a case of argument that they actually did so. So we're going to review these cases and discuss it a little bit from a historical perspective after we go through the halachic details. And then we're going to move on with other matters of hilchos tzitzis that relate to women, etc. So let's begin. Review from last week, we said that the first case scenario in the Shulchan Aruch in which we meet the concept of women being exempt from time-bound positive commands is regarding the laws of tzitzis. That's in chapter 8 in Shulchan Aruch. And we said that the source for that, or the scriptural source for why women are exempt, is based on the fact that they are exempt from tefillin. And tefillin, in the parsha of tefillin, is connected to all the mitzvahs, which teaches us that just like women are exempt from tefillin, so too they are exempt from all the mitzvahs. Now, we're not going to exempt them from every mitzvah in the Torah. So we're limiting it to the type of mitzvah that tefillin is. Now, just as tefillin is a time-dependent command, so too all time-dependent commands, such as a tzitzis and a talis, women are exempt from fulfilling the mitzvah, which practically means that all the matters of four-corner garments and requirements of them having tzitzis brought in the Shulchan Aruch regarding men do not apply to women. So a woman is allowed to have a four-corner garment without tzitzis on it. She does not transgress anything while a man does. We discussed last week that in truth, even tefillin itself is brought down that women are exempt from tefillin because it is a time-dependent command. But you can't use the source of time-dependent commands to exempt due to time-dependent commands. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, why does it say in the Constitution that you can't do this and this? Because it says in the Constitution. No, that's not the reason why it says it. So we brought that, in truth, tefillin is connected to Torah learning. And women are exempt from Torah learning outside of the halachas that they are required to learn. And therefore, they are also exempt from teaching Torah to their children. There's the biblical obligation, the dibarta bam, is the father of the child, not the mother of the child. Practically, often the wife or the mother is, in practice, fulfilling this more than the men because she's at home with the kids. But the official legal obligation is on the father and not the mother.
So the father should actually allot time every day?
He has to arrange for it to be done. So when we send our kids to Talmud Torah, to school, it's not just a babysitting service. They are actually fulfilling our obligation of teaching Torah.
But you're not doing it directly with the children, you're sending them somewhere.
Correct. You're allowed to hire a shliach.
Oh, okay.
So that's my shliach. Sometimes my wife is my shliach. She's teaching them how to put on tzitzis. She's teaching my daughter, she's teaching my son, so she's my shliach to perform the obligation I have. Mm-hmm. But obviously, it's a good idea for all fathers to set out time for learning with their children and fulfilling the mitzvah themselves personally, rather than through a shliach. But nonetheless, a person is able to do it, and that's what a Talmud Torah is. that you appoint a shliach, which is the Talmud Torah, to teach your child, fill your biblical command. So the fact that women are exempt from that they don't have the biblical responsibility of teaching their son, rather the husband does, it's learned from their Torah, learning Torah, v'dibartum is in the same parasha as tefillin, ukshartum leisal yedech, it's all in Shema. So women are exempt from tefillin, and from there we attach tefillin to the whole Torah, that just like tefillin is a time-dependent command, so too tzitzis. Tefillin. How is tefillin a time-dependent command? We went through last week that tzitzis is because, according to the Rambam, you don't have to wear, even men don't have to wear tzitzis at night. Meaning that if I have a four-cornered garment at night, it doesn't need tzitzis. Only during the daytime, when you can see the strings, is it obligated in having tzitzis on its four-cornered garments. So according to the Rambam, it ends up being a time-dependent command because it's dependent on day, not obligated at night. So since it's dependent on day, women are exempt from it, because we learn from tefillin that women are exempt from all time-dependent commands.
Can I ask a question? Do men take off their tzitzits when they go to the bathroom?
No need. Only a talis gadol, not a talis katan. There's no need talis katan. So,
What about men wearing talis sleep?
right, so as I'm saying, according to the Rambam, he holds that you're not doing any mitzvah.
But you're not transgressing anything.
There's no prohibition on wearing tzitzis.
Right.
You're just not fulfilling a mitzvah at night. But don't forget that night ends with a leisa shachar. So, you're still sleeping a good 4 or 5 hours after that. And, it's already daytime, according to Halacha. Meaning that you would be wearing tzitzis. But even according to the Rambam, al pi Kabbalah, there's an inyan of sleeping in tzitzis. That's why men sleep in tzitzis. It's not just based on the other opinion Rishonim hold even nighttime is a time of tzitzis, but also mainly based on Kabbalah that the tzitzis protects one even at night. With that said, we will emphasize what we said again last week, and that is that even by men, there is no obligation to put on a talis gadol or talis katan. The obligation is if you happen to purchase a garment that contains four corners in a way defined by halacha that requires tzitzis, then you must tie tzitzis to those corners. If you do not choose to ever purchase a garment that has four corners, which in today's wardrobe we don't have, it's non-existent, then you never have to wear tzitzis. So if we actually follow the letter of the law, tzitzis would be extinct. Nobody would be wearing it today.
What about that? What do you mean?
I mean, again,
There are four-cornered garments.
like, such as?
Such as
I am not aware of any four-cornered garment. Yeah, but I'm saying you're buying it for the purpose of tzitzis.
Right.
My point is you do not have to. The command is
okay.
not
Like if
go
you-
out to Judaica world and purchase a four-cornered garment. No, the mitzvah is if you happen to enjoy wearing four-cornered garments and you're going to put one on, make sure you put on tzitzis before. But if I don't like four-cornered garments, it's not in style, nobody wears them, I don't have to wear one. The idea that we wear tzitzis, the men wear tzitzis, is because we would like to obligate ourselves in the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah command of God. And the Rebbe explains in the talk that there's a whole reason why this mitzvah is so unique in that form. It's one of the only mitzvahs that it's dependent on the action. Similar to a house in which, you only have a mitzvah to put a mezuzah on your door if you own a home. If you don't own a home, if you sleep in a tent, then, you do not have a mitzvah to put on mezuzah. Now, do I have an obligation to buy a home or rent a home to fulfill the mitzvah of mezuzah? The answer is no, you do not. So if you want to be part of tent city, that's fine from halachic perspective. You're not transgressing not having a mezuzah because now you exempted yourself from owning a home or renting a home. So the same idea. I do not have to make myself obligated, but nonetheless, we are very particular to do so. And the Rebbe explains that the reason is because the whole idea of the mitzvah of tzitzis is that the kavan manachasim we intend when we put on tzitzis, men intend when they put on tzitzis, we're doing it to accept the yoke of heaven, to accept the yoke of mitzvahs. Now that's something you have to do on your own. If you're commanded to accept the yoke, what kind of accepting is that? What kind of acceptance is it of accepting the yoke of the king if you were commanded to accept the yoke of the king? It's something you do on your own, and then you follow his commands. But to be initially commanded, that's called dictatorship. That's into dictatorship and monarchy. Monarchy officially is that the king is elected by the people who love him, who love their king, and it's an amazing relationship, and they really enjoy him. And dictatorship is where someone, against the will of the people, controls the people. That's why, right, the dictator of Venezuela is hated and the Queen of England is loved, okay? Because one is appointed and one is usurps power. So Hashem doesn't want us to enter the relationship of the religion where He forces us into everything. He first, on our own, we accept Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim, and then afterwards we do the mitzvahs based on the instructions of the king, based on the command. So that's the whole idea. So if it would be an instruction to go purchase a four-cornered garment to fulfill the mitzvah, then we have no choice in the Kabbalah sale. It's forced upon us. So that's why, but nonetheless, we can understand from there also that to go ahead and say, use the argument, since I'm not actually commanded and obligated to purchase the garment, to have a four-cornered garment, so I'm not going to do it. That's throwing off the entire concept of accepting the yoke of heaven. So it's very important. So the Gemara Menachos brings that even though a person who doesn't walk around with tzitzis, doesn't wear tzitzis, he learned what I just said, he knows what I just said, he says, hey, there's no command to purchase a four-cornered garment, I don't like four-cornered garments, I'm not wearing it, and I'm not transgressing anything, which is technically true. The Gemara says in a time of wrath, he gets punished. And the reason is because, as I said before, even though you're not instructed, you're not commanded and forced to do it, you're in the relationship with God for a reason, and therefore you should want to accept this upon yourself. So it says in a time b'shas rischa, a person is punished for, and this is not just regarding this, but it's all commands that we're really exempt from, but we can go ahead and try to do them. We have a moral and spiritual responsibility to endeavor to do the commands and not to find a way out. So the type of Judaism that some cater today, which is excuse Judaism, always try to find a halachic legality to circumvent the command and instruction, is not a real path of Judaism. That's called, that's the fugitives. Those are the ones running away from Judaism. We want Judaism. We run forward to the mitzvah. We don't try to run away from the mitzvah. Okay, with that said, even if you hold that the mitzvah of tzitzis applies at night, meaning if you have a four-corner garment, you wear tzitzis at night as well on it, it's still considered a time-dependent command because, as I discussed last week, Shabbos officially, since you can't tie strings onto your garment, it's forbidden, one of the lamates malachas, so too it's therefore exempt from tzitzis. So it's bottom line is it's a time-dependent command no matter what opinion you hold like. So that's why women are exempt. So they are allowed to wear four-cornered garments that don't have tzitzis. An example, they may purchase a blanket. Women may purchase a blanket, which most blankets I know have four corners. Okay, most blankets are not round, and most blankets don't round the ends. They are cornered ends for whatever reason. I have no idea why. Maybe it's just easier. And so they don't have to worry about that because they're exempt from the mitzvah. But men, they have a problem. If we're going to sleep under a blanket with four corners, which most blankets have, then according to some opinions, even though it's not a garment that you're walking around in the street with, no one goes in the street wearing their blanket, nonetheless, it is still a garment you wear at night. And therefore, it would be chayiv in tzitzis, according to some opinions. And that's why one should, and this is a good thing to tell the women who are in charge of all the sewing and mending in the home, when the husband isn't looking, look to the right, look to the left, do a snip on one of the corners, make it rounded. Don't snip it in an angle, because then you'll have five corners. You just made yourself more chayiv. Round. Make it a round corner. Correct. If I have 8 corners, okay, it's a beautiful blanket, 8-cornered blanket, then you still have to put on 4 pairs of tzitzis.
That goes for a top sheet also.
A what?
Top sheet, if you wear put a sheet on, not a blanket.
I was just using blanket as any garment, any material you are using on your body to warm yourself at night. Okay? If you are using your towel as a blanket, and that is what it was made for, then yes, but most towels are manufactured as towels, so they are not chayiv. Now, you do have some people who walk around with towels, by the way, so they wear it like a skirt. So if that is, but nonetheless, Hilchos Tzitzis is complicated. I have a whole book on it. That's why the book has 300 pages, because it's not just, you wake up in the morning, put on your tzitzis, and it's one page worth of halachas. There's a lot of details, a lot of legalities here, and it discusses all these points of when it's high and when not. Correct. There are many different opinions. Bottom line, what I said is halacha l'maisa. Even though many are not makbid in this, and they have upon whom to rely, based on the Alte Rebbe's ruling in the Siddur, if the blankets that are designated for the husband to use at night or during the day, whenever he sleeps, should have a corner rounded, not angled, meaning a scissor just cutting straight wouldn't help, rounded so it's put. Because if even one of the 4 corners are rounded, it's no longer a 4-cornered garment. It's a 3-cornered garment, and three-cornered garments are not obligated in tzitzis.
That's only if it really has like a square, what is it?
Correct. If you happen to
Right
have
angle
bought,
corner.
yeah, if you happen to have bought a
Because
blanket which was
quilts-
already done,
Down quilts often have a more rounded corner.
right. So the question is, how round is round?
Okay, that's my question.
So,
When is it round?
right. So I have a picture in my, I have a real size picture in my book of the exact measurement. You can actually put your blanket to the picture. You have to buy the book though. You have to put the blanket to the picture, and it actually shows you the circumference. I probably have it online also. You can get it from my website. Yeah, it's a certain circumference that breaks the corner. Okay, now those who are not makbid on this, as I said before, have upon whom to rely, because technically it is a night garment, and technically it's not meant for wearing, but nonetheless, as I said, since there is a strict approach, which the Alte Rebbe does follow in his siddur, that's why we should be particular in this, if possible. In Taim Chetmim, they weren't particular in this, and one of the non mashgichim was going around, and he brought a scissor with him, and he snipped all the blankets in order to fulfill this directive of the Alte
Any
Rebbe.
problems in the home if that's not done? Like a mezuzah, like
I
you say you
don't.
check the mezuzah?
I try not to be God's lawyer or his policeman.
No, sometimes it's no,
I
and
hope
it's
that
like-
God has mercy on everyone, even if they
Amen.
don't follow his.
Amen.
But obviously, being more makbid in God's will and halacha
It's always good.
is always good. Yeah, I can't see it being bad. Right? So,
And if a man is wearing tzitzit at night, sleeping regularly,
yeah.
that doesn't cover.
No, because the obligation is on every four-cornered garment. Even if I'm wearing 10 four-cornered garments, I still have to have 10 pairs of tzitzis. When we're going to have Tchias HaMesim, and get ready because it's going to come soon in Meretz Hashem, and here in Tzfas we have a lot of people. You know, most cities, you don't have that many Jews that are coming up. Okay, you live in Crown Heights, you're not going to see any dead men walking around after Tchias HaMesim. They're going to be in Queens, they're going to be in Shemar Das. You know, they're not going to be in that area, but here in Tzfas we're going to have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people around there, and you're going to see them wearing tons of tzitzis. Everyone's a Pinchas Scheinberg. Everyone's Rabbi Pinchas Scheinberg wearing 15 tzitzis. What's going on? Everyone's going to, why? Because all their garments back in the day were four-cornered. That's how it was manufactured. So they wore the four-cornered garment. They wore tzitzis on their undershirt, and they wore tzitzis on their tzitzis, and they wore tzitzis on their jalabia, right, the robe, and they wore tzitzis on their coat. Everything had tzitzis. The kapat had tzitzis. Everything had tzitzis because everything was four-cornered. That was the style of garments back then. Okay, so the wearing one doesn't exempt you from the others. The obligation is not on the person, it's on the garment. But women are exempt from this, so as I said, they do not have this issue. Now regarding tefillin, why is tefillin considered a time-dependent command? The answer is, so some say, as the Rambam rules, because a man is not chayiv to wear tefillin at night. So since a man's not chayiv to wear tefillin at night, therefore, women are exempt. In other words, the mitzvah of tefillin ideally always was, and remains till today, theoretically, to wear all the time. You're supposed to wear tefillin. A man is supposed to wear tefillin all the time. He's never supposed to walk around without tefillin, except when he needs the bathroom or is going in privacy. That's what was also done back in the day. And once again, Tchias HaMesim, we're going to see everybody walking around with tefillin. Everyone wears tefillin during all times of day. That is how a Jew walks around. However, at night, the Rambam holds it's a biblical prohibition. We don't wear tefillin at night. It's forbidden. And therefore, it's a time-dependent command, and therefore women do not wear it. Practically, we don't rule like the Rambam. And we hold that biblically, even at night, you wear tefillin. And if so, when the question is asked, why are women exempt? Anyone know the answer?
But it makes more sense that you would be exempt at night, because you just said two situations where you don't wear tefillin.
But that's not time dependent. That's bathroom dependent.
Unless you're an unmarried bacher, you should
Right.
be wearing tefillin at night.
Bar mitzvah?
So there's something not right.
That's not time dependent. Everyone becomes obligated bar mitzvah. Time dependent commands mean that there's times during the year you're not obligated, or times during the day you're not obligated.
During the day.
Uh-huh.
You have to, if you're going to say a bracha, you have to do it during the day.
So the Rambam holds it's a day mitzvah, so it's time dependent, but we don't rule that way. We hold that actually biblically, rabbinically, you're not allowed to wear tefillin at night. You've never seen anyone wear tefillin at night, right?
Maybe like sleep.
I've never even seen
No, I'm not. Night is not sleeping. Does everyone sleep at night? You have a lot of owls today. Not everyone sleeps at night. Night is, I know it says in the Gemara, right? The night is man shena, but in today's day and age, most of us who go to sleep are going to sleep past the time that all of our forefathers woke up. They all woke up after Chatzais. We go to sleep after Chatzais. So, and sometimes close to Leisa Shachar. So even though nighttime is a time of sleeping, we can be awake at night. And so the question is, do you wear tefillin? Now, you've probably never seen any man wearing tefillin at night. That's because everyone agrees you're not allowed to. The question just is why. So if I hold it's because it's a biblical exemption or prohibition, then that makes it a time-dependent command from which women as well are exempt. If I ever hold, no, really, you can wear tefillin at night, and it's just for a different reason, rabbinically, that it's not done, then we go back to the question, so why don't women wear tefillin? And the answer to that is because we all agree that Shabbos and Yontif, one does not wear tefillin and is forbidden to wear tefillin. There is a biblical prohibition for a man to wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif. The reason is because the whole purpose of tefillin is to act as a sign, an ois, between us and God. And Shabbos and Yontif, we already have the sign given to all of us. We have our own sign, so we don't need the sign given by God. And someone who goes ahead and adds the sign of tefillin to the sign of Shabbos and Yontif, he's contradicting the sign of Shabbos and Yontif. And it says he's chayiv misa for desecrating Shabbos and Yontif, belittling Shabbos and Yontif. And that's why we do not wear tefillin Shabbos and Yontif. So whenever we get someone, a new Baal Tshuva, to start putting on tefillin, we always make sure to tell them, not on Saturdays, and make sure to look up the Jewish holidays, never put it on a Jewish holiday.
It's almost like making, God forbid, that more important than Shabbos. Isn't that like the idea if somebody were to put tefillin on? It's like making it more.
It's saying that the covenant of Shabbos is not good enough.
Right.
That's what it's right. So that's why we do not wear tefillin on Shabbos. But that would, in turn, turn it into a time-dependent command, and that is the root of the reason why women do not wear tefillin. Okay, that is the reason. I just mentioned, interestingly, that while, as I said before, nighttime, we all agree you don't wear tefillin at night, and that's why you'll never see anyone putting on tefillin at night. In the times of the Holocaust, the only time that they were able to wear tefillin without being seen was during nighttime. They would wake up very early in the morning, like an hour before they were called up for for work by the Nazis, and they would put on tefillin at night. There's a whole tshuva written by the Rav of the town of, not Brody, what is it? Slipped my mind. In any event, so this individual from Europe, he was from Poland. He was the Rav of the town. He was the Rav of the ghetto. He wrote a whole tshuva on this idea of that the men will put on tefillin at night, even though technically you're not allowed to, because they had no other choice, and it was either that or not fulfilling the biblical command.
Wow.
Bottom line is that this is the reason why women are exempt from the mitzvah, as being time dependent. Now let's get to the second part. Well, let's do it anyways. So this we discussed already last week, just a review. We said that it's brought down in this area of the Shulchan Aruch that women are allowed to choose to perform all mitzvahs that they are exempt from, and not only can they choose to perform it, but according to the Ashkenazi ruling of the Ramah, and even according to the majority of the Sephardi poskim, such as the Ben Ish Chai, the Kaf Chaim, and others, they may even say a bracha on the mitzvahs that they are exempt from. And the reason for that is, we discussed last week, is because they get rewarded. We explained this last week, that even though we say women are exempt from a mitzvah, it doesn't mean that to them the mitzvah is like, it's nothing. It's like, juggling, which is not a mitzvah. It is something. It's just that it's not on the status and level of a male of which you are commanded and instructed. But if you do the mitzvah anyways, then you get schar, you get reward. We discussed this last week even regarding a guy, and all the more so regarding a Jewish woman, and that's why there are many positive commands that women are exempt from that they fulfill, such as lulav, and such as shayfer, and such as sometimes eating in the sukkah. There's a lot of positive commands that are time dependent, which women fulfill, and they get schar for doing so. It's part of the sublime heaven reward sheet. Not the same as the ones they are obligated in, but it's still part of the list.
That would be the case also.
Talis and tefillin? Right, so here now comes a discussion of where they say, based on what was just stated, they say, so technically from the letter of the law, the Alte Rebbe states in the other poskim, it is permitted for a woman to wear tzitzis if she so chooses. And furthermore, she may even say a bracha. However, they conclude, and we did this last week, that a woman is to refrain and abstain from doing so, even though from the technical halachic aspects, it is not prohibited. This is unlike the opinion who says that wearing tzitzis is beged ish, so it would transgress the biblical prohibition of wearing the garment of a man. We explained last week this isn't so simple practically. That's not the way the codifiers rule, bottom line, unless she is purposely wearing it to look like a man. A woman who's putting on a pair of tzitzis in order so people will think she is a man will definitely be transgressing leisilbash. But if she's just wearing it because she wants to perform the mitzvah, even though we say she should abstain and not do so, especially today that doing so is putting oneself in relationship with a certain group of jury, nonetheless she wouldn't be transgressing leisilbash. So why is it that we discourage? Why do we discourage women? Even though we don't say shayfer, no, women shouldn't hear shayfer. We don't say sukkah, no, women shouldn't eat the sukkah. We don't say don't do lulav. In fact, we say you have to because you accept it upon yourself. You have to shake lulav. You have to hear shayfer because you accepted this mitzvah upon yourself as an obligation. What happens suddenly by tzitzis that we don't? So we said last week the reason brought down in the Shulchan Aruch is because tzitzis itself is not something that a man is directly commanded in. It's only if he happens to have the garment and puts on the garment, then he should wear it. So since it's not a direct command, so he himself is being machmer, so a woman wearing will be machmer shebe machmer, because she's not commanded. The man is also not commanded. He's only commanded if he has the four-corner garment. That's what's brought down. I'm not saying I understand this reason fully. I actually do not understand it fully, but that is the reason that's recorded. Yeah.
I don't want to forget it. I remember I told you before that we were working like with talit or with the tzitzits. Well, now I work at a gallery where we sell talit and tzitzits, and I didn't know, and I didn't want to say anything, but there was he wasn't Jewish. A man came, and he was so excited about Israel, and so he loved our talis set. It was over 1,000 shekels, and my boss would wanted to sell it to him, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, are we even allowed to sell it to him?
We discussed this last week, that it's forbidden to sell a pair of talis or tzitzis to a guy, not because a guy can't fulfill the mitzvah. We said before, only Shabbos a guy is prohibited from doing. All the other mitzvahs, one second, let me finish. All the other mitzvahs a Gentile is allowed to fulfill, and he gets schar. We said explicitly from the Rambam, he gets schar if he wants to. Yeah. If he wants to do the mitzvah giving tzedakah, he gets schar. If he wants to do the mitzvah of kibbud avim, he gets schar. It's a good thing. However, with tzitzis, the problem is that if we sell tzitzis to the guy, who knows which guy is going to end up with it, and we have a major problem always of, there's a halacha that Esav hates Yaakov, and they can dress up and impersonate like a religious Jew and cause chas v'shalom a Jew to enter into sakana. The number 2 bus that was blown up in 2001, that I was almost on that bus, okay, the individual who went onto that bus was dressed like a chussid, with tzitzis and a streimel. How did he get it? Who in their right mind in Meir Sharim thought of selling a streimel to a Sephardi Jew? He was an Arab. He looked Sephardi, right? Had dark skin. You should have investigated. Why are you buying a streimel? Why would he want to buy a streimel?
Why not?
Sephardim don't wear streimels. So you should have investigated. You should have said it's a little strange. I mean, when we know what we're living in, we know where we're living. What, an Ashkenazi? Bottom line. Yeah. I was learning in Tzemach Tzedek, Jerusalem, Old City, and that bus left at about 7:15 from the Old City. I usually took, not necessarily that bus, but the bus at that time, 7 o'clock, 7:15, 7:30. That night I got delayed. Something happened, I got delayed, and instead I walked. I didn't take any bus at all. And as I'm walking, I heard the boom.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but that person I knew, so that's the reason why we have Halacha and Shulchan Aruch. It's forbidden to sell tzitzis to a guy, not because of desecration or it's forbidden for them to do the mitzvah, but because, they can impersonate. But nonetheless, there's an argument you could say that was regarding Goyim that we don't have peace with, but a guy, right, a guy who, he's not suspected of murder, there's authority of the land. You can hold the argument that, there's no prohibition. But the best thing to do is what I saw a lot of Reform does. Reform, they have a huge market for tzitzis wearing by Goyim, because most of them are Goyim. Reform Jews are not really Jews in a lot of their situations. And I saw something very interesting. They have a website, they have tons of sales. If only the real tzitzis and Orthodox would have as many as they do. They have a huge market. And they came up with a very interesting patent. And instead of selling an actual garment with tzitzis sewn, tied onto the corners, they just sell you the clips, tzitzis clips. So you clip the tzitzis onto the corner of your garment. And they have different colors, and it's made of steel, so it doesn't break. The Howard tzitzis are tears. It's made of steel strings. Steel tzitzis. So you could have done the same thing. You can have a special tzitzis garment for the guy, and you can make it of steel or something that every Jew knows, hey, this is something weird about what he's wearing, and then that would avoid the Isser.
Wouldn't even think that if you didn't say it about that.
Actually, now that I'm remembering, the way it's catered is that you clip it to your belt. You clip it to your belt. Now, you don't wear it, tzitzis. You just buy the strings. You clip it to your belt.
Well, the Sephardi's cut theirs in anyway. You don't even see them.
Well, the Reform, they don't do the Sephardi thing. They have it out. Okay. So getting back. So we said before,
It sounds like no.
Maybe it's not a good idea.
halacha is a person should not sell a pair of kosher tzitzis to a guy. Bottom line. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know.
Unless
it
we
be
ask,
say it in a way that you
unless
can
he's
hear.
like suspicious himself because that's asking for trouble and he's like, whatever, he's gonna do what he wants to do. It's his thing.
That's true. How do you know who's it going?
Plus, he's from Sweden. I don't think he's
I guess
going to do
Mashiach
it.
will tell us when he arrives.
Okay. Let's continue. That's the conclusion of the Shulchan Aruch itself, that a woman should abstain from wearing tzitzis due to the reason I brought up before. And practically all the Achreinim record, and this is Halacha L'maisa, that it is actually forbidden to do so. It is practically forbidden for a woman today to wear tzitzis for the sake of the mitzvah. Again, that is for the sake of the mitzvah. A woman is cold and she happens to be the only wool garment that will warm her up is a talis gadol, then that's not a problem. Having tzitzis there's no is for a woman to wear a garment that has tzitzis. But to do it for the sake of the mitzvah, this is a specific one of the Taryag, of time-dependent commands, in which we bottom line rule that a woman should not do. And as the Poskim bring down, as the Aruch Shulchan writes, that one should protest and not let them do so. The Maril, in his time, there was a woman named Rabbanit Brunya, not Bruria, Brunya. She was a famous rabbaness in his time. She gave, all the speeches, and everyone loved her. And she would wear a talis when she spoke, talis gadol. And the Maril was not happy with it. The only reason why he didn't protest her, because anyways she wouldn't listen to him. But he wrote that down. Don't take that I didn't protest her because I agree and I'm being complacent. I know anyways she won't listen. So we see that even though from the technical research and analyzation there is no biblical or even rabbinical prohibition for women to wear tzitzis, it's just like any other positive command. Nonetheless, practically, we rule she should abstain, and as the Achreinim conclude, it is forbidden to be done. Also, Al-Pi Kabbalah, the Arizal explains that the mitzvah of tzitzis as well as the mitzvah of tefillin do not have any connection to a woman. We discussed this in our introductory class on this course, in which we explain that Al-Pi Kabbalah, husband and wife are grouped together on their top and split on their bottom. So, meaning they share body but have separate legs, and Kabbalistically. And what we said that there's different mitzvahs that relate to the body. Those mitzvahs, the man, we have certain mitzvahs relate to the body, certain mitzvahs relate to the legs. The mitzvahs that relate to the legs, men and women have to each do individually. So they both have to keep Shabbos, they both have to do Kiddush. It's individual. It's part of the leg mitzvahs. But the body mitzvahs, since it's one body, when the husband does it, it's as if the wife is doing it. So in truth, anyone whose husbands wear tzitzis, they are actually wearing tzitzis. Okay, so that's based on the Arizal. The same thing is regarding tefillin. When the husband wears tefillin, it's as if the wife is actually wearing tefillin. Now, regarding so far we discussed mainly focused on tzitzis and that women shouldn't wear it for the reason we mentioned, and practically it's forbidden. What about tefillin? So by tefillin we find an even stricter approach, and that is that they are exempt from doing so, and it is forbidden for them to do so. The reason here is a little different. The reason here is as follows. even though, right, it's an actual obligation for men to wear tefillin, as we said, ideally the entire daytime. Today, we do not wear it the entire day. That's why I'm not wearing tefillin right now. And that is because we aren't able to be fully conscious of the holiness of the tefillin for such a long time. Halavai, that during davening, we should be conscious of the holiness of the tefillin, let alone the entire day. So because of that, for the last probably 1,000 years, it's been customary for men not to wear tefillin the whole day, except for some select individuals. You have some yichidei skula till this very day, they the whole day walk around with tefillin. The whole day they're wearing tefillin. But that's 1 in a million, okay? Most people, and they're not allowed to do it. They can't take that upon themselves unless they have the right madrega, they're on the right spiritual caliber, because we said before, tefillin is very holy. A person's thoughts can chas v'shalom damage the tefillin. We know with the story with the Maggid of Mezrich. His tefillin was inherited by his grandson from the Sadigora family of Admairin, Buyan Sadigora. And not Sfardi, I said Sadigora. It's one of the grandchildren of the Maggid of Mezrich. They inherited the Maggid's tefillin, and the Shamash, there's a whole story of which one of the brothers got the tefillin, and one of the Shamashim decided to wear it, and he wore it, and he basically stole the tefillin to wear. He wanted to have the greatness of wearing the Maggid's tefillin. So he wore it without permission, and when the tefillin eventually got back to the grandson, he stopped putting it on because he said, I don't feel the holiness anymore of it. It was eventually sent to a sefer, and the sefer said, there's no words. It's empty. And it was explained that this person, by wearing it, he went ahead and removed the holiness of it. There's another story with the Maggid. The Alte Rebbe, I believe, said over this story of where someone who wasn't on the proper caliber wore his tefillin, and one of the letters disappeared. The tefillin became puzzle, and the Maggid then wore it again, and it was checked, and it was kosher. The letter came back. The letter disappeared and came back. This is a known thing. Yeah, absolutely. This is 100% a known thing, documented. Not just documented in Svarim, it's documented by people who check tefillin. Okay? You can have one guy who checked the tefillin on day 1. He says every letter is there, every word is there. Another guy checks in day 2. The letter was never written. Now, either people are senile, or we have a concept called the flying letters by tefillin, and that's the truth. We have a concept called flying letters. We have a person who doesn't act properly with the tefillin. It can cause a psul in the tefillin as if it was always puzzle. So the Alte Rebbe asked the Maggid, we have a rule in Halacha that if a letter was written in the wrong order, the tefillin's puzzle. So what did it help that the Maggid rewore his tefillin and got the letter to come back? It wasn't written in the order. So he said that only applies when the person is physically writing it. But if it disappeared miraculously and comes back miraculously, that is not a problem. There's a story with a very well-known and elderly sofer in Mea Sharim, who was known to write the best quality and most expensive tefillin in all Jerusalem, maybe the whole Eretz Yisrael. And unfortunately, he was involved in some negative talk against Chassidus. And the Rebbe instructed, I believe his name was Rabbi Margolis, who was also part of the Eda Charedis, to tell this individual to go check that his tefillin, and people who bought his tefillin should have their tefillin checked. And the Kitzer, when this Hayrah got out, a number of people who had just bought tefillin from him went and got their tefillin checked, and they all came back and said, Hashem's name is missing, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And it came to the point where he realized, one of the people in the story that was written says that when the person, he said, met someone in the middle, he said he met the sefer in the mikvah, and he said, the tefillin I bought from you, I just had them checked. And he said, no, don't tell me. The Lubavitcher Rebbe took away Hashem's name. I already know. That's how he said it. Yeah, but in any event, so this is a story that's told over. So tefillin is something very miraculous, has a tremendous, tremendous kedusha, and that's why we are very careful to only wear it at a time where we can be 100% concentrating and focused on its holiness, which is hopefully during davening, but definitely not when we're involved in mundane activity, and that's why we do not wear it any other time. Based on that, why did it introduce all this? Because based on that, it's explained why this is one of those mitzvahs that women are not to take upon themselves to do, even though in general the rule is they can. In this one, we rule that they are not to do so, and the reason is because of the reasons of purity. There's certain states of impurity that a woman may have, not applicable to men, such as during times of nida, and therefore that opposes the wearing of tefillin and is a belittlement of its kedusha, and that's why practically the women are told not to wear tefillin.
A completely different question on the same topic. The Rebbe's mitzvah tefillin.
Yeah.
Let's assume that the man who's doing this tefillin is not using his tefillin but has an extra pair of tefillin. He's going out and he's putting them on people who never put on tefillin, rarely put on, and sometimes
Right.
who knows where they're at. So what happens? He puts on tefillin a couple people in the morning, and where their thoughts are, what their intention is, what their connection is. Does that
So it's a very valid question.
Harm to, God forbid,
Right,
somebody
right.
down the line?
It's a valid question, and number one, a lot of people, because of that, have their own pair of tefillin. But that's also because, forget about the spiritual. I mean, people have wet hair, sweat, and all gets into your tefillin. Your tefillin has a chance of getting puzzled a lot quicker. We don't have to get into the spiritual reasons, even very physical reasons, tefillin become puzzled. So a lot of people have a separate pair for mitzvah. But on the other hand, when the Rebbe first came out with mitzvah tefillin, the opponents used that argument to be against it. How can you desecrate the tefillin by putting on the head of a non-religious Jew, someone who's not Shemesh Shabbos, who eats not kosher? And the Rebbe took the approach that every single Jew, no matter what his status is, has an obligation, a biblical obligation, to wear tefillin. And we don't tell a Jew, just because you're doing one sin, go ahead and do another sin. So if we have the ability to influence someone to put on tefillin, he has the mitzvah. And we can't start being, thought police, what's going through his mind. We can assume that when a Jew is putting on tefillin for those 60 seconds, he's probably, I could probably put on paper that, meaning guarantee, that the people putting on tefillin and mitzvahim probably have greater kavanah than we put on tefillin every single day. Because we put it on every single day, and it's something that we're wearing for an hour throughout the whole davening. So our machshavos, our number one, gets redundant and natural. And as well, it's a long period of time. Try to get someone to focus stay for 5 minutes. Look how hard it is. Imagine a whole hour of davening. It's everyone on their phone, everyone's fidgeting something. It's very hard to keep focused. But this guy, he's doing it for 1 minute. He's putting on doing the mitzvah of Hashem. And so I don't think we have to worry about the kavanah. They're doing a very big mitzvah of doing the mitzvah of Hashem. And on the contrary, there is a counter-argument to say that you should specifically use your own tefillin, as a tefillin that's been used by so many Jews, so many mitzvahs, is definitely holier. But nonetheless, of course, a person who puts on tefillin on himself and others should have it checked periodically to make sure it's kosher. And, that's something that should be done every single year.
We were in Jerusalem, my husband and I, and we didn't know we were going to spend the night, so my husband didn't have his tefillin. So he went to Rabbi Alte's house to borrow his tefillin, and he said as soon as he put on his tefillin, he was literally crying the whole time because of the confusion. He said he was like literally shaking after he put on Rabbi Alte's tefillin. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like literally shaking and crying. So the effect is like also on a positive level.
100%. The Rebbe always promoted the position of don't wait for intellectual indoctrination to get someone to do a mitzvah. The mitzvah itself has a spiritual power that your intellectual arguments will never achieve. So go ahead and do a mitzvah first. Others in the Baal Teshuvah took the approach first. You got to sit down and explain about God and explain about Torah. And after a whole course of a month of this understanding Judaism, then you can go to the mitzvahs. The Rebbe took a very opposite approach. No, the mitzvahs have a holiness. They are a magnet to the soul. So first do the mitzvah, and that will itself attract the soul. We're not negating the intellectual discussions, but nonetheless, it shouldn't be the approach that has to be a prerequisite to the mitzvah. Yeah. According to Halacha, there are two separate mitzvahs. The Shel Rosh is one mitzvah, the Shel Yad is another mitzvah. We do it together, but nonetheless, if there's only one available, or if the person doesn't want to put one of them on, then obviously you only put on one of them, and he says a bracha, and he's fulfilling the mitzvah deraisa for that tefillin, not for the one he's not putting on. So there's no problem with that. And that is done. Sometimes someone has an arm injury they're not able to put on, or chas v'shalom, war veterans that have lost arms, lost limbs, so they would only put on the Shel Rosh, and they are fulfilling a mitzvah. But nonetheless, basically we can understand that we shouldn't view the mitzvah of talis and the mitzvah of tefillin as it's the man's mitzvah, it's the husband's mitzvah, we're exempt, has nothing to do with us. The Arizal explains it's your mitzvah that he fulfills for you. So if you would like your tefillin to get checked once a year, tell your husband. If he says, well, I don't like checking once a year, but it's my mitzvah too. When he does it, you're fulfilling the mitzvah as well. So therefore, the wife, and as we already explained earlier, even if they're not yet married, okay, the Hashem knows who the future zivug is. That man, wherever he is, when he puts on tefillin, he's doing it also for the other soul, for his other half. There are poskim who rule that it is not just a matter of cleanliness of why women should not wear tefillin, but actually a biblical prohibition due to leisilbash, once again, a male garment. As I said before, practically this is not the approach we take, and it is minadin, technically it's permitted, but just because of the aspect of the yerida, of not having proper holiness, we avoid doing so. Due to this reason that we don't have the proper holiness, that's why we don't wear it the whole day, even though we're supposed to. It used to be that it was a period of time that even men didn't wear tefillin. Even men didn't wear. Anytime, not even during davening. The Smag writes that in Spain and in other countries, he writes in which there are hundreds of thousands of Jews. He lived in the year 1000. No one in the whole country puts on tefillin. Nobody wears tefillin. No men wear tefillin. And he explains why. The reason is because they feel they don't have the proper holiness and kedusha to put it on. So even though all the poskim argue on this and say this is bad, this should not be done, you have a mitzvah deraisa once a day, you have to be mechaven at least a little bit, clear your mind for at least that hour or half hour, whatever it is, to put on tefillin. And obviously no one can say, well, I follow the Spanish custom of 1,000 years ago, you know. But from there I'm explaining how this matter of kedusha is so important that even a man who's obligated back then would use it to exempt. And certainly, we must abide by what's written in the poskim that women do not wear tefillin directly; they wear it through their other half, as I said. When the husband puts it on, consider that they put it on. Let's now go through, as I said earlier, we're going to go through a list of different women throughout history that we have noted or said about that they wore talis and tefillin. So I was able. The list I came up with was actually between 5 and 6 women throughout history. I'm sure there were more, probably not publicized, but from what we know of, there's about 5/6. Who are they? And I'll go into each one individually. We have Michal Bas Shaul, right, the daughter of King Shaul. We have Bruria, who was the wife of Rabbi Meir Balanes. Brunya, who we mentioned before in the Chuvas Maril. We have the daughters of Rashi, the Maral, and Maral's wife, that is. And we have the Besula Miludmir. So we're going to go into each one of these personalities a little bit. We'll go into the 6th one more later. We're going to go into each one. Let's begin with Michal Bas Shaul. So Michal Bas Shaul is actually the only one with a real source, okay? It is written explicitly in the Gemara in Eruvin that Michal, the daughter of Shaul, wore tefillin, and no one protested her. Let's not forget, she was the daughter of the king, so I don't know, people who protested her would end up still be breathing the next day, but in any event, she was not protested. The Gemara writes this down, she wore tefillin. Michal Bas Shaul wore tefillin. Who was she? Let's discuss a little bit about her personality. Michal Bas Shaul famously was the first wife of David HaMelech. She was the youngest daughter of King Shaul, and she was known for her tremendous dedication to her husband David, which later went sour, as we will now explain. David HaMelech had promised, Shaul had promised David that he would marry his oldest daughter, his Bechera, to him. In the end, he married her off to someone else. She was given to somebody else. Meirav was given to Adriel HaMichulasi, as it says in Tanakh, and instead he gave him his youngest daughter, which was Michal, in exchange for a certain dowry, which usually comes from the wife's side. This time had to come from his side, as it says in Tanakh, when he had to bring 100 dead Philistines as his dowry. It's a specific part of the body, I'm not going to mention it. But anyway, so that's how he got the ability to marry, 100 Philistines. So he gets married, and we know that David and Shaul was not a good match. Shaul HaMelech right away understood that King David, who wasn't yet the king of course, is looking to usurp him from power and take over the monarchy. So he viewed him as someone who is liable for capital punishment, and Shaul HaMelech tried to kill David. How did he know? As Shmuel Hanavi, he was told by Hashem, go anoint the son of Yishai. We learned in this past week's Parshas Kisisa. One of the Taryag mitzvahs that's learned from last week's Parsha is the mitzvah of the Shemen HaMishcha, the anointing oil. We discussed in the Parsha how it was made, all the different ingredients. That anointing oil was kept in a flask and remains around and well till this very day, and will be used again when Mashiach comes. Now, originally it was used to anoint all the kalim of the temple, as explicitly written in the Parsha. It was also used to anoint the Kohanim. All the Kohanim were anointed with the Shemen HaMishcha. It was also used to anoint new kings, new lineage of kingship, of monarchy. So Shaul was anointed with the Shemen HaMishcha when he became king, and when it came time for King David, he was also anointed. Now, when Shmuel came with the jar, the flask of Shemen HaMishcha, there's only one. Since the times of Moshe, there was never another one made, and there never will be another one made. It was one time it was made, and there's a lot of miracles recorded in Chazal about it. One of them was like the Lahavdil, like the bottle of Aruch of the Baba Sali, that the more he poured, the more the stayed the same. And so to here, even though it was used so much for so many things, the amount of liquid remained the same in this bottle, in this flask. So Shmuel Hanavi had access to it. He brought it. He had lined up all the sons of Yishai. They all lined up. And the Shemen HaMishcha, the way it worked, it didn't need anyone to put it on. It did it on its own. It would flow in midair and go on to the person appointed king. And the first son went in front of it. The Shemen HaMishcha said, nope, didn't move. The next son, till they came to the youngest son, David HaMelech, who was viewed as a mamzer. He was viewed as someone of stained lineage. And for him, the oil jumped and went on to him. Yes, Chazal say. It's one of the miracles that happened. It jumped and went on to him, and this became, of course, publicized everywhere, and everyone was so happy, except, of course, for Shaul the king. King Shaul decided he is after my kingship, he's chayiv misa, and he tried to do many things to kill him. When he came to the house of David to kill David, his daughter Michal saw him coming, and she helped David escape through the window. And so the Tanakh describes a lot of the tremendous dedication she had for David HaMelech. We're not going to go through the whole story that's relevant. Bottom line is that this turned sour when David HaMelech eventually became king, and he was returning with the ark, with the Aron Habris that was captured by the Plishtim. He was returning with it to Yerushalayim, and he was dancing and singing and whistling. He was whistling in front of it, and Michal, the daughter of aristocracy, sees this outsider of Vernun, and she says, David, have you gone meshugeh? Have you gone nuts? What are you, you're singing and dancing here and whistling like like a gangster off the street, like one of the pop artists. What is this? You're the king of the Jewish people. How can you act in such an undignified manner, said Michal to David, and that basically soured the relationship. It says, right after that, the pasuk says, after it says what Michal told David, and David replied, I am doing this for the sake of Hashem, I'm doing it for the honor of God, and that it's a privilege for me to belittle myself for the honor of God. And a person shouldn't hold his honor when it comes to God and say he can't do this. The Rebbe once used this, by the way, to counter-argue what some opposition groups were saying, that the Rebbe would encourage people to whistle during Fabregens. And there were people who voiced that this is it's an act of Christianity. I have no idea what whistling has to do with Christianity. Somebody can explain it to me one day. But that's what they were saying. And that it's a way of the Goyim, it's Derech HaGoyim, it's forbidden, and how can Lubavitch Rebbe do this? So Rebbe explained, we have an explicit verse in Tanakh that David HaMelech whistled, Mecharker Mefazes. He was whistling in front of the Aron. So how can you say it's a Gentile act to whistle? In any event, so it says afterwards in the pasuk that Michal did not have any children until the day she died. And this pasuk, the Arizal takes and explains to analyze the personality of Michal, and he basically explains that Michal had a neshama de duchra. She had a male soul, or a soul rooted in the masculine spheres. And because of this, she couldn't physically have children. And because of this also, he writes, she put on tefillin. So we see Michal was a very special personality. She had some masculine side to her, which prevented her from having children. At the same time, she put on tefillin, and no one protested because they saw this belonged to Michal. Now, obviously, Michal was a very religious woman and everything else. Those who want to claim masculinity only regarding tefillin, it's a whole package deal. Right? It has to come with being medactic on all the Torah mitzvahs. So some went on the level of Michal, so it went without protest, but that wouldn't work today. Next on our list, we have Bruria. Who was Bruria? As we said before, Bruria was the wife of Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes, who was buried in Tiberia. She was also the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Trajan, one of the 10 martyrs that were killed by the Romans, who we read about, the Asara Haruge Malchus, in the Kinnis of Tisha B'Av, and in the Seder Avodah of Yom Kippur by Musaf. So her father, Rabbi Chanina ben Trajan, was killed. He married his daughter to Rabbi Meir. Now this woman, Bruria, she was a tremendous Torah scholar. Well, we don't have any evidence that she actually wore talis and tefillin. People say she did. This is just rumors. We don't have any evidence in the Talmud or anywhere else that she actually wore talis and tefillin. It's possible she did. I mean, she was a tremendous Talmud Chacham, as we will now go through. We're called Talmidat Chachma, whatever in the feminine term. But we don't actually have a source to say that she wore talis and tefillin. But let's just discuss who she was and what she did do. So she had vast knowledge of the entire Talmud that existed in her time. Let's not forget her husband, Rabbi Meir, was one of the main Tanoim. He Stam Mishnik Rabbi Meir. And she, in fact, taught Torah to a lot of people. There's a number of places in the Talmud that discusses her opinion on different issues. There's one machlekes in the Mishnah that's brought regarding Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Tarfon, and the Gemara then says that Bruria ruled like Rabbi Yeshua, as a proof that that is the correct way to rule. She would also bring up a lot of different halachic discussions. She would voice her opinion. She wasn't intimidated. She voiced her opinion. The Gemara brings down that she taught. She once saw Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba learning Torah quietly. And she said to him, when a person learns Torah quietly, you're able to forget it. In order for a person to be able to remember the Torah, they have to learn it out loud. And that is taka ruled in the Shulchan Aruch, that the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is only when you verbalize it, and a person should learn it out loud in order for it to remain in his memory. So that is a statement of Bruria. Another time, the Gemara says, I have a quote here. The Gemara writes in Eruvin that she was walking down the street and she meets Rabbi Yossi Aglili, one of the Tanoim, a colleague of her husband Rabbi Meir. And he asked her, Bruria, be'eze derech neilech lelud, can you please tell me the directions to Lud? And that being her personality, a great Talmud Chacham and having no intimidation of anyone, she said, Glili shaita, you're an idiot Galilean. Why? Rabbi Yossi Aglili, she said this to. Did not the sages say that you shouldn't increase in words to a woman? So he was taken aback. What did you want me to say? All I asked her was for directions to Lud. So she said, you should have said, be'ezel lud, how to lud. That's it. You said, what road do I take to lud? Should have kept it short and to the point. And this talk is ruled in the Mishnah in Pirkei Yavis, Alte b'sicha ima isha, and she was saying, using this dictum to teach Rabbi Yossi Aglili a lesson. So that's another example brought down in the Talmud. The Talmud also brings down regarding her and her husband, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was in shul, Yeshiv Aderish Bebeis HaMedrash, by Shabbos of Mincha, and unfortunately his two elder children, his two Bechorim, passed away, children of him and Bruria, they died. What did their mother do? What did Bruria do? She spread a garment on top of them, as if they were sleeping. Matzei Shabbos, Rabbi Meir came home from the Beis HaMedrash, and he asked his wife Bruria, where are my two sons? So she said to them, oh, they went to learn in shul. I guess they were already older. They weren't exactly toddlers. They went to learn in shul. And he said back to her, but I looked in shul. I didn't see them there. She said, let's make Havdalah first. Okay, he went ahead, he made Havdalah. And after Havdalah, he asked Bruria, where are my two sons? So he said, oh, they just went out for a little bit. They'll be back very shortly. He began eating Malava Malka. And before he said the bracha on his meal, he again asked her the same question. And she said, I want to ask you a question. She said back to Rabbi Meir, when she was again interrogated, where are my two sons? She said back to him, I have a question for you. He said, go ahead. He said, my teacher, Rebbe, if a person was given a pikadon, a certain item to guard, and now the owner of the item comes to collect it, do you have to return it? He said, of course you have to return it. You have to be an honest person. Someone gave you something to guard, you have to return it. She said back to him, this is exactly what has happened. Your two children have unfortunately passed away. Hashem, who has given you them as a pikadon, has now taken them back. Wow. And this it says, Hashem Nasan, Hashem Lakayich, Hashem Avarich, from Eiv, it's said in Tziddik Hadin. And Rabbi Chanina said that these words of his wife comforted Rabbi Meir and Eshes Chayil Ateres Baal. We also find that one time Rabbi Meir was davening for his enemies to die. And she told him, don't daven for them to die, daven for them to do tshuva, yitamu chatoim v'loy choitim, may the sins die and not the people.
Didn't he do something really mean to her?
Oh, coming up. So we see she was a very special woman. She taught Torah in the Beis HaMedrash in the women's section, and men would listen in. She was a very smart and educated individual of Torah learning. The Gemara, Rashi on the Gemara brings a very strange story that happened with her, which was basically, what was her end, what happened with her, so the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says that Rabbi Meir ran away from the Romans. And it says, Akar v'barach, he got up and he ran away. Now we don't know why he ran away. So Rashi tells us a very interesting Medrash story of what happened. And this is a strange story, so I'm pre-warning everyone. It's a strange story.
Will we have that in
Not to that extent. This story touches upon analyzing exactly where does Bruria find her place in Jewish history and Jewish philosophy of what is the position of women in Torah learning and this type of what we would rather call male advancement. So on the one hand, it wasn't protested. The Gemara didn't have any issues with her learning Torah, even though for the general populace it says, right, it says in the Mishnah, so the Gemara brings down, a person who teaches his daughter Torah to the same extent as a man, Kamalama Tiflis. But Bruria was made an exception to this rule, even in Talmudic times. Certainly today, we have Beis Yaakov, etc., but they didn't have an issue with that. But nonetheless, we do find in the story that so long as it's in the parameters of what the sages did, it's okay. But once it swerves from the parameters that the sages created, then already it becomes something very dangerous. And Rashi says the following story. Because she was a very great scholar, and as we saw how she talked to Rabbi Yossi Aglili and other people, she had no problem in washing them away, brushing them off. When Rabbi Meir told her that the sages state, the Nashim Daitan Kalas Aleim, that women have more of a natural tendency of being able to be persuaded than men. They have a softer spot than men. So she argued with her husband, Rebbe Meir. She said, I don't believe in that Maimer Chazal. I don't agree, I don't accept that Maimer Chazal. We are just as strong-minded and sometimes even more than men. So Rebbe Meir argued back. You're wrong, Chazal are right. And they decided to do a wager, to do a bet. And it says Rebbe Meir hired one of his students to try to seduce her, Bruria, and unfortunately, after many attempts, Rashi says she fell to the sin, and after tremendous embarrassment, she took her life. And Rashi concludes, Rabbi Meir, when he saw what happened, from shame, he ran away from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. This is what's printed in Rashi. We don't have a source for this Rashi anywhere else. We don't have any co-source of it. And there are authorities who do actually puncture holes into it, saying it never happened. This is folklore. Obviously, Rashi doesn't tell us lies, but what could be, this is the famous way out whenever we have a problematic Rashi. There's a concept called Talmud Toya Kosvei, that sometimes the students would write in different things that weren't exactly filtered through from Rashi himself. And there's entire Masechtas where it's attributed to Rashi, the commentary, but we actually don't have manuscripts or real proof that it was Rashi. It could have been, for example, the Rashbam wrote a whole commentary. The Rashbam was his grandson. Sometimes you don't know if it's Rashi or if it was someone else who wrote it. So some want to say that this does not have any corroboration anywhere else, and certainly not in the Gemara. The Gemara just says Rebbe Meir fled, and Rashi then tells us this whole story of why he fled. Bottom line is that does not have outside corroboration. Some say it is true, some say it's not true. But nonetheless, let's focus on the message. The message here is that even Bruria had to be limited to what the sages say, and not to overpass that, as what the Chachamim said were true, and what the Chachamim said were meant for everyone's benefit, and everyone has their position and their purpose in life. So when the man wants to do things that belong to the woman, and the woman wants to do things that belong to the man, they're playing with fire, they're swaying away from the words of the sages, and everyone should focus on their tafkid. Once again, going back to our discussion, we do not have any indication that she actually wore talis and tefillin. The third one is someone more recent. Let's do Rashi's daughters first. That's very simple. We have absolutely no proof at all that Rashi's daughters did anything. In fact, we don't even know he had daughters. No, we know he had daughters, the Rashbam's wife and others' wives, but we have absolutely no indication that they wore talis and tefillin. If it's a Kabbalah of many generations, okay, it's a Kabbalah. But if it's not a Kabbalah, then it's sourceless, it's baseless, and there's no reason to enter Rashi's daughters into the mess, into the discussion of women wearing talis and tefillin, because it's actually not recorded anywhere. When some of the Rishonim discussed women wearing it, when the Maharil discussed about Brunya wearing a talis, he didn't discuss about Rashi's daughters. No one ever mentions it. So that itself is an indication that somewhere along the ages, someone wrote a very nice story, a made-up story, in one of the journals or Jewish magazines, and it was great. Rashi's daughters wore talis and tefillin, and before you knew it, it became Jewish folklore. We have many things like that have happened. In the 1700s, in the Maskilim, they started the Yiddish newspapers. They had no problem rewriting history. If they had to be given an expertise in some field, one of them was this. They had no problem in rewriting history, revisionists of history. So they would have no problem, and if it serves the agenda, of course, to write that Rashi's daughters wore tefillin. Prove me otherwise. She lived 500 years ago. How are you going to prove? So they know now it's going to have opposition, but they knew in another 2-3 generations, everyone's going to believe it as if it actually happened. Today, a lot of history books are based on the revisionist history, and they have a source. They can even write a footnote of a source. But what are they sourcing to? To the revisionists themselves, the original revisionists. So what does that help? The last but not least is about 100 years ago, there was a woman named Chana Rachel Verbermacher. That was her name. Chana Rachel Verbermacher. She lived in the 1800s. She's actually buried in Har HaZeisim. She lived in Mea Shearim. Originally, she was from Russia. She was born in Ludmir, the town of Ludmir. And her parents were very wealthy. And they passed away at a very young age. They passed when she was a very young age. She became a Yisayimah from both her mother and her father and inherited a tremendous wealth. And she was affiliated, her parents, with the Chernobyl Hasidic group around till today. We have right down the block, Chernobyl. Ask them about this woman. They know all about them, the older Hasidim. And basically, she became an Admor. She became like an Admor, like a Rebbe. She wore talis and tefillin the whole day. She didn't just wear for davening. She wore the whole day talis and tefillin. And she accepted people for Yechidus. She had a huge following. Now, because she was so wealthy, she didn't need Pidyonis. She didn't have to get Pidyonis. So she wasn't dependent on Chassidim giving her money. She had her own money. She didn't need anybody's money. And she was a very firm Jew. She was a very firm Jew, Shemer Torah mitzvahs, but she wore talis and tefillin, and she had a lot of Chassidim, not just women, but even men, who came and listened to her drushes. Now, how did this go around in the Jewish world? So Reb Mordechai Chernobyl, who was the Rebbe at that time, was not too happy about what she was doing. Mainly because she wasn't married. So he instructed her to get married. And basically the way the story goes is that she got married. It was an arranged marriage, and the marriage lasted less than 24 hours. She got divorced right away. Yeah, she asked for a get right away. It didn't work out. And the opposition to what she was doing was raised tremendously, to the point she decided to move to Eretz Yisrael and move to Mea Shearim. I find that quite interesting and ironic. This is probably one of the last women who we know in the last 700 odd years who wore talis and tefillin, was living in Mea Shearim and running a Hasidic group in Mea Shearim.
Wow.
Chana Bracha. I know Chana Rachel Verbermacher was her name. Bottom line, Maharal, the wife of the Maharal. Yes, the wife of the Maharal was a very learned woman. Again, sorry, I did skip her. She was a very learned woman, similar to Bruria, but we don't have any indication she wore talis and tefillin. Okay, so that's also no historical evidence. The wife of the Maharal was a very educated woman. But specifically in talis and tefillin, we only have Michal, that's documented in the Gemara, and this is well known regarding this woman who we just said, that she went in and did this. It was not accepted with a very good eye, but for whatever reason she lived in Mea Shearim and was buried in Har HaZeisim. The new restructionist movement, they use her as they consider one of their founding fathers for the progressive for the progressiveness of the woman and everything. So they interviewed one of these. They actually built right. So they built in Har HaZeisim. They built now a whole beautiful matzeva and everything. But the truth is that they interviewed the people who were doing it, which are people who are affiliated with the kind of Reconstructionist movement, which was started by Zalman Schachter, right, Zalman Schachter. So they actually wanted to build a whole mausoleum on top of it, but in the end they decided that since she was a firm Jew, she was a Haredi Jew, that they didn't want, and the Chevra Kaddish and Har HaZeisim wouldn't allow it, so they didn't write anything. It's a normal matzeva, everything just like anywhere else in Har HaZeisim. Nothing was changed as is protocol. So they asked her in this interview, this woman, don't you understand that, like you guys aren't religious, you guys are unorthodox. She was, says, yeah, we do know that she would be quite ashamed of us, of affiliating ourselves with her, but nonetheless. Bottom line, these are the stories in history. We see that even though by other mitzvahs, women are encouraged and they have the right to go ahead and do, by talis and tefillin, these are two special mitzvahs which We said that women are not to do them, and those who did so, they were very unique individuals. Okay, we're going to now go into some further details regarding tzitzis that relate to women, even though, as we said, women are exempt, but some halachas do relate to women as well. May a woman make the tzitzis strings, the strings themselves? Can she work in tzitzis making factories? You have many tzitzis making factories. There's a whole system of machinery that helps to make tzitzis strings, and according to many poskim, and that is of course the Mahadran approach, it has to be done by hand, because it has to be done the shma. The tzitzis, tzitzis is made from wool strings around the whole world. They don't make cotton tzitzis. If you ever see cotton tzitzis, it's a big question mark. Who made them? The minhag is, it's not puzzle, but we don't sell cotton tzitzis, because cotton tzitzis is only valid for a cotton garment. And since most tzitzis today contain wool, putting on cotton tzitzis to a wool garment is tantamount to not putting on tzitzis at all. So because this can cause confusion, most people don't know this. So if you sell cotton tzitzis, a person can buy, oh, I have cheap cotton tzitzis. It can cause a big problem. So therefore, we do not manufacture cotton tzitzis. One time I tried a few years ago when I was writing my book on Hilchos Tzitzis to try to get a company to manufacture cotton tzitzis, especially for the cotton talis cotton, because you have people who buy cotton talis cottons, you have some who buy wool talis cottons. So I said, according to Halacha, it is better for a cotton talis cotton to have cotton tzitzis than for a wool talis cotton, than for it to have wool tzitzis. And since today the only available tzitzis is wool, therefore we should manufacture cotton. When discussed with a number of Rabbanim, we all agreed, and this was of course my suspicion to begin with, even though there's a halachic preference to wear cotton tzitzis to a cotton beged, because of the confusion it can eventually cause, it shouldn't be done. Because you know what happens in the market of business. Once one company starts selling it, even though they're saying, oh, it's limited to the cotton ones, the shuk becomes broken, the market becomes breached, and people can get confused and they can start getting on. So the question is like this. It has to be made by man, okay? You need male work. And it needs human work. And it has to be done lishma. That's why it has to be done by a human, because computers, as nice as they are to us, when they're programmed that way, they do not have their own separate minds. They cannot think on their own yet, okay? Even smart robots or smartphones, an actual human programmed them to do whatever they are doing. They are just the shluchim of the men. So they are not able to do anything lishma. So I can't, even if I set up on the machinery in the factory, that whenever they are moving the tzitzis along, they say with a computer voice, l'shem mitzvahs tzitzis, l'shem mitzvahs tzitzis. That wouldn't count, because they are not an actual human being. So we need a human to do the process of making the strings, right? Taking the wool off we have the wool there's a whole process. We take the wool off the sheep, and then we put it into the factory. It has to be combed. They comb the wool. Anyone make wool? Anyone know the process? It's like a 10-step process. A whole bunch of different things have to be done to the wool. And today in tzitzis making, we pretty much still use the old style of how this was done. In real manufacturing of clothing, of garments, everything is done mechanically, everything is done with machinery. But because of the lishma aspect, we do a lot of the process by hand. I'm not saying that there aren't machines, there are machines, but a lot of the processes are done by hand to ensure the lishma. Now, so the question is like this: since it has to be done lishma, who is valid to do the making of the tzitzis? So goyim are not valid, as even if you pay a guy and he tells you, okay, I'll say lishma when I make the tzitzis if you pay me $1 per every lishma we say he's not doing it lishma, he's doing it l'shem hakesef, for the sake of the money. He's not doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. And therefore the halach is, if a guy makes tzitzis strings, doesn't tie it onto the beged, he just made them, manufactured them, it's pasul. That's why you can only buy tzitzis strings with hashgacha. If you went to Russia and you see that they're selling rolls of wool string, thick wool string, looks just like tzitzis, they're selling it for beans. It's the cheapest thing on earth. You can buy Today tzitzis are expensive. These are 30 shekel tzitzis right here, just the strings. You can sell these strings. You're buying them for about 2 cents each, and you can make a ton of money. They're all puzzle because they're made by goyim. It has to be done lishma. Now, what about a woman? The answer is a woman is kosher, and that is the old age custom. Therefore, you will see in tzitzis factories that they manufacture the tzitzis strings. Male and female Jews all work together in the factory. Women are kosher to do it lishma. They have to say lishma. They say l'shem kedushas tzitzis. They go ahead and they say it, and there's no problem whatsoever. I'm going to get to the tying. Right now, we only discuss the making of the strings. So that's across the board agreed upon. There is no problem for women to make it.
You mean like to spin the wool, make it into...
The process of turning it into a string that can be then marketed to be tied onto the beged. Okay? Not only can they do that, that is the old age custom that women would do that. They would make the tzitzis strings of their husbands. They would make the strings. Okay, so there's no problem with them working in the factory. That's done till today. Now, regarding tying the strings, here we get a little trickier. Here it's already not so simple. There's a concept that we learn that in order for someone to make the mitzvah, or prepare the mitzvah, or construct the mitzvah, they have to be obligated in the mitzvah. Where do we learn this from? From tefillin. It says regarding tefillin that a woman is invalid to be a sefer, to write tefillin. Why? Because she's not obligated in the mitzvah. Only one who's obligated in writing tefillin in wearing tefillin is allowed to write tefillin. Someone who's not obligated in wearing tefillin is biblically invalid to write the tefillin. And if they do, it may look like a beautiful pair of tefillin. It's puzzle. It's as if it's not, there's no parchments inside. Even a man, if a child who has yet to reach 18 years of age, he is invalid to write tefillin. As even if he's already bar mitzvah, in order to be biblically liable in mitzvahs, he has to also reach the signs of puberty. And we don't know for a fact if he's reached those signs until he's 18 years old or has a beard. So therefore, we don't allow anyone to be a sefer if they are below 18 years old. Because we don't know for certain they have reached the stage of obligation of Torah and mitzvahs, biblically. And therefore, the same thing applies by women, they are invalid. So there's now a discussion that's brought. Do we take this rule that they have to be obligated in the mitzvah in order to create the mitzvah and apply it across the board to all the mitzvahs in the Torah? Or is it limited only to certain cases? This is a major machlekes in the Rishonim. Some hold that it only applies in specific scenarios, such as in tefillin, and that would, by the way, also invalidate a woman from making the leather straps, and it will invalidate a woman from making the batim, and it will invalidate her from tying the knot on the tefillin, even if she knew how to do so. So to a katan would be invalid for that reason, and when under 18 would be invalid for that reason, etc. And that's why also practically we rule a woman can't write a Sefer Torah or a mezuzah. It's due to that invalidation. But regarding tzitzis, it's a debate of the Rishonim and not just tzitzis, I'll mention a few other cases as well where it's debated. Regarding tzitzis and all the other mitzvahs, it's a debate amongst the Rishonim. Some hold it's not a problem. We don't extend this ruling everywhere else, so a woman can make tzitzis. She's a Jew. She is not chayiv in the mitzvah, but she's able to do it lishma, as we already stated earlier regarding making the strings, that she can make the strings. So too, just like she can make the strings lishma, so too she can tie the strings lishma, and therefore a woman is valid to tie tzitzis onto a four-cornered garment. Rabbeinu Tam, however, says no. Women are invalid. In order to be allowed to create the mitzvah, you have to be obligated in the mitzvah everywhere. So he holds it invalid, and practically we rule is the following. L'chatchila, we are machmer, and therefore women do not make tzitzis. Therefore, if you happen to be washing your husband's talis or talis katan, and you see that one of the strings is beginning to fall apart, right? The knot is two knots together, and one of them is moving upwards, and you want to tighten it, the best thing is to give to the husband to do. That's part of the mitzvah. B'diavad, it's okay. But lichatchila, it should be done by the man. Okay, to be chayshish for Rabbeinu Tam, as we rule lichatchila to suspect. B'diavad, if it was done, there's no need. If the husband now says, "Oh, you just ruined my old tzitzis now, I have to undo the whole thing," you tell him no. The first opinion in the Shulchan Aruch holds it's mutter. That's the main opinion. That's how the Mechaber ruled, and b'shas atchak or b'diavad, that's how we rule as well. So relax, it's okay b'diavad, but lichatchila, as I said, it should be the husband that's tightening the tzitzis on the man. Now, if it's a child's tzitzis, so there's actually no difference between the child doing it and you doing it. In fact, it's better that you do it because you can do it lishma. A child doesn't have the ability to do lishma. But the best thing is for the father of the home to be able to do it. He tightens the tzitzis in order for it to be, as we said, done according to all opinions. Untangling it, some hold that untangling is also part of the mitzvah. Nonetheless, we don't find that that is something that is considered part of making the tzitzis or unmaking. Therefore, I wouldn't say that that's an issue. But if you want to use this as an excuse to give the husband another job to do, that's fine. Other case examples where we find this same debate that we just mentioned. Sukkah. Is a woman allowed to help build the sukkah, or can she build the sukkah on her own? Answer: women are exempt from living in a sukkah because it is a time-dependent command. You're only obligated in it 7 days a year, so it's time-dependent. So women are exempt. Now, if she's building it for herself, of course it's kosher. She's exempt from the mitzvah, so it doesn't matter. But if she's building it for the family, and there are males that are going to be sitting in that sukkah, whether a husband, a son, a father, any Jewish male that's obligated in the mitzvah, the question comes up. We said before, Rabbeinu Tam invalidates a woman from making the tzitzis, tying the tzitzis to the garment because she's not chayiv in the mitzvah. So maybe so too, and he holds if it was done, it's possible. Right? It's not just he says, "Oh, don't do it." If you do it, it's as if it's not kosher. So too, regarding a sukkah, according to Rabbeinu Tam, she should, and that's practically rule lechatchila, that while she can make the walls, the schach has to be done by a man who's above the age of mitzvahs. Again, as we said before, above age 18, he should be the one to do it. The walls is not a problem because the main part of the sukkah is the actual schach, so it should always be the man that does the schach. If it happened that she went ahead and she didn't want to wait until the husband does it and she already put up the schach, he doesn't have to take down the whole sukkah. All he has to do is lift up the schach, one tefach, lift it up and put it back down, and that is fine. Another case example is mezuzah. The mezuzah fell. You want to put it back on. Should you do so or should the husband do so? So by mezuzah, unlike sukkah and unlike tzitzis, women are chayiv in the mitzvah of mezuzah. They are obligated. There's no difference between a male and female homeowner. They both have to put mezuzahs on their doors. However, we find that they are invalid to write the mezuzah. It's a very interesting mitzvah where we have a very strange coalition of the two different aspects. On the one hand, she's chayiv in the mitzvah mezuzah. On the other hand, we are recruiting support from tefillin and sefer Torah to say she's invalid to write it. To write it, it's part of the mitzvah. It's an accessory. One thing's for sure: you cannot have a mezuzah on your door if it's not written. Someone had to write it. So why are women exempted? So it's learned. It's biblically. It's learned from the different drashos that just like women they can't do the sefer Torah, they can't do the tefillin, so they can't do the mezuzah.
A man goes to the mikveh every time he writes Hashem's name. So
okay, but that's not biblically required. That's that's not biblically. Absolutely not. That's a nice thing. It's a hiddur. That's not required. So the only issue is because of this halachic problem that since she's exempt from tefillin, she can't write tefillin, and from there we extend even to mezuzah. So the place can discuss, what about putting up the mezuzah? Do we say that just like she is invalid for writing the mezuzah, she's invalid for putting up the mezuzah or not? And some place can take the position that she is, and therefore she should not put up the mezuzah and the husband should do so, practically. We did a daily on this not too long ago. We have an article online. The bottom line is like this. If there is a male above age 18 years old that is in the vicinity of where the mezuzah fell, then just have him put it up, be machmir. What does it hurt? But if it means delaying the mezuzah going up, certainly you should put it up. And this opinion that we mentioned is a das yochid. It's a very lone opinion. There's no one together with him in the same room. Most poskim don't even record it. Sometimes we say in halacha, we found one posik who said it's usher, so it's one versus no one, and he wins. No. If one posik out of the million of all the generations said something, and all the other 999,000 didn't even say a word about it, it's a sign that they hold this is not a problem. So it's not 1 versus 0, it's 1 versus 999,000. And in this case, no one except for one posik mentions this issue, from which we can deduce that from letter of the law, since they are chayiv in the mitzvah of mezuzah, they can also put up the mezuzah. However, as I said before, if there's a male readily available above age 18, it is better for him to put it up than for you to put it up yourself.
Yes.
Also, you can put it up and wait for the husband to come home, and then he'll do it again. He'll take it off and put it back on if he wants to be certain. If he wants to be machmir, that is not a problem.
He has to be Jewish, obviously, but
100%. Well, that's also machlekes, but yes,
does
preferably
he have to
Jewish.
be Shomer Shabbat?
Lechatchila, we want him to be Shomer Shabbos. Yes,
What age?
above 18, always above
So if
18.
he's not Shomer Shabbat, you're better off doing it. If you're like, because my neighbors, well,
If there is a male that's not 18 years old that's Shomer Shabbos in the close vicinity, it's better you do it yourself.
okay.
Yes. Again, if you have a husband, you can always, when he comes home, you can take it off and put it back on.
Okay.
When you do it, you say a bracha. Ad kedei kach, we don't hold of this opinion that we even allow you to put it on with a bracha. We don't say, you bought mezuzahs, you're living on your own. Don't put on your mezuzahs till a male can come and put them on. Chas v'shalom. We're not going to be machmir like a lone opinion and trample on the actual halacha in his expense. The halacha is you have every day that passes without a mezuzah, a person's transgressing an isser. Especially here in Eretz Yisrael, that even a rental requires a mezuzah from day one, not like Chutz La'aretz where you have 30 days. So what are you waiting for? You can't wait in order to be machmir. Put it up. If you want to be machmir, then you can wait for a man to come eventually and take it off and put it back on. Mitzvah next week, we will continue with the laws of prayers. We will begin davening, laws of davening that relate to women.
I like it. It's fun. Oh yeah? I like doing it. I do it with my It's fun. Love putting up the sukkah. I love it. Oh, love it. It's so much fun. My kids were too.
I read an article that she was called the Maid of Ludmir.
Go.
Yes.
So I read an article. She had Ruach HaKodesh. When she got married and cut her hair, shaved her head, she lost her Ruach HaKodesh.
There's a lot of stories that are so
Yeah.
told about it. We don't know which are true, which aren't.
Which is one of the
A
reasons.
lot of stories.
So Angel's very machmir about not. His
cutting the hair.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
he was at his daughter's, the Shulchan Purim, and everyone was kind of shicker, and they shaved his head and just left him his payos, and he was depressed for the next year until his kukos start growing back. He was so upset. He just did the Chaber tour to the Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
The 4-day tour where you do Alter Rebbe, the Magid, the Alter Rebbe, the Magid, Uman, Hadich.
Or Tzadikim, what are they called? The Derech Tzadikim tour
Yeah,
company?
yeah. It's 4-day
How much was it,
whirlwind.
like $1,000?
Yeah, it was $1,000.
So did I.
And so Sarah's gonna help me.
Yeah.
So I'm going in there now. Yeah.
One day when I retire, I can do it.
Amen.
Is that something you would
I'll
want to
talk
do?
to you.
Yes,
You
yeah.
know what? They feel much more holy because the place where they are is so like the contrast is just.
Oh, yeah. So
Okay. 4:00 in the morning. So after this was my question.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it.
Right. It's like not your thing.
Because tomorrow we're going away, but.
Oh, wow. Okay, okay. Yeah.
I'll check it. You can check it today, even like check it here, or give you the finished sheet. Oh, yeah, just see if it goes through.
I can even check it when I get from you.
Right, either way. So you can check.
So I have your thing. I can.
Because it comes when you shake it, you post it, whatever.
Right, I see the link, but I didn't know it was the same link that was.
It's the same link, it should be the same link, because that's going in with the weekly Shabbat that I do, and that's it. No, did you bring it on to
That's my husband, possibly.
No?
Here, there's a full cover.
All right, anyway, good.
They're just part of the Chabad. Even downstairs, they might have a spoon where you get the hot water. That's even a better chance.